Here's your 20-bullet outline for the brutal realities of medieval warfare. 1. Campfire whispers of war. You stand by a crackling fire, hearing grim tales of knights and bloodshed. 2. Swords and shields, clashing. Marching to battle, feel the bone-rattling clash of iron and will. 3. Bows, crossbows, and deadly rain. The sudden hail of arrows that snuffs out life in an instant. 4. The ground beneath your feet. Mud, blood, and the eerie quiet after battle. The earth drinks it all in. 5. Siege engines and stone showers. Catapults creak and crash, castles tremble, and you wonder if the walls will hold. 6. Tunnels and treachery. Dark, winding tunnels beneath castles where sabotage and suffocation lurk. 7. Feudal lords and bitter feuds. Lords argue and alliances crack. It's all about power, not chivalry. 8. Mercenaries and madmen. Wild-eyed swords for hire and battlefield legends born in screams and dust. 9. The church's blessing and curse. Priests bless blades. Relics ride into war. Faith and fear hand in hand. 10. Armors rattle and roar. Heavy steel and padded gambesons. Each clang a prayer to survive. 11. The scent of the battlefield. The unholy perfume of death, sweat, and horse dungle too vivid. 12. Peasants caught in the crossfire. Muddy fields turned graveyards. Farmers become fighters by force. 13. Hospitals of horror. Battlefield wounds stitched with dirty hands, leeches, and prayers in the same breath. 14. Nightfall and uneasy dreams. Darkness offers no peace, only haunted sleep in the chill air. 15. Horsepower and carnage. Thundering hooves. Lances shatter, and you cling to your saddle for dear life. 16. Taverns and tales of glory. Survivors trade boasts over ale. Truth and lies merging in the flickering light. 17. Kings, queens, and court intrigue. The whisper of poisoned goblets and broken promises in castle halls. 18. Legends carved in stone and song. Bards immortalize your deedser, your folly, and epic ballads. 19. A grim dance with death. Each step you take is a gamble with fate. Tomorrow is never promised. 20. Echoes of the past. Soft goodnight. Final reflections and drifting memories as the war-weary world grows quiet. Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we gather around a flickering campfire where the shadows seem to dance and whisper secrets of a brutal, medieval world. The embers crackle softly as you settle in, the scent of smoke mingling with the cold night air. The moon is just a sliver overhead, barely enough light to keep the monsters at bay. Your breath mists in the chill, and somewhere close by, a wolf howls. You probably won't survive this, but that's half the fun, isn't it? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this little campfire stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ground beneath you is hard, littered with twigs and stones that jab at your backside. The fire's warmth barely keeps the night's chill from your bones, but is better than nothing. Across from you, a weathered veteran with scars crisscrossing his face begins his tale. His voice is low and steady, like a drumbeat, and you lean in to catch every word. He tells you of knights in shining armor, though he's quick to point out that the shine didn't last long. Once those knights hit the muddy field, their gleaming plate was caked in filth, the metal growing slick with blood and gore. Chivalry might be a pretty word, but here, in the glow of this fire, it's as hollow as the helmets those knights wore. The stories swirl around you like the smoke, thick with the scent of burning pine. You imagine yourself there, on the edge of a battlefield, the air vibrating with the clash of steel and the screams of the dying. You grip your own battered sword, no fancy blade, just a piece of iron with a hilt worn smooth from fierce slick hands. Historians still argue whether medieval warriors truly believed they'd be rewarded in the next life for the horrors they committed in this one. You wonder if that mattered when you're knee-deep in muck and your best friend is face down in it beside you. The veteran's tale shifts, and he talks of the long marches days of plodding through forests and over rocky hills. Your feet ache just hearing it, the weight of armor turning each step into a small battle of its own. He laughs dryly, mentioning how some soldiers used to stuff their boots with straw or wool to keep the blisters at bay. You try to imagine the smell of those boots after a week on the marchlets. Just say it's not something you'd bottle and sell. He describes the way the soldiers huddled around fires like this one at night, sharing rough bread and sour wine, swapping rumors of what lay ahead. Each new rumor was worse than the last stories of unstoppable foes and cruel lords who cared more for their coin than the lives of the men who fought for them. You shift closer to the fire, feeling the warmth on your face. The veteran's eyes catch the light as he talks about how sometimes the worst part wasn't the fighting, it was the waiting. Hours spent in a damp trench or behind a wooden palisade, heart hammering in your chest, every creak of leather or jingle of mail enough to send your mind spinning. Quirky fact for you, some soldiers actually believed that bathing before battle was bad luck cleanliness, was practically a death sentence in their minds. So they went into battle dirty and stinking, convinced the reek of sweat and old campfires would somehow protect them from the sharp end of a lance. The old man sighs, a sound like wind through dead branches, and you can't help but feel a chill run up your spine. You're not sure if it's the cold or the weight of his words. His stories blur the line between heroism and horror, and you see how quickly the glory of war fades once the arrows start flying. The fire pops loudly, and you jump a little, just enough to make the old man smirk. He knows that fear, knows it's the same fear every soldier carries. You wonder what kept them going when the sun set and the battlefield was shrouded in fog. Maybe it was the promise of a warm hearth and a soft bed waiting at home. Maybe it was just the knowledge that the only way out was through. Historians still argue whether these men fought for king, for country, or simply to fill their bellies with the meager pay of a foot soldier. Maybe it was all three. Maybe it was none. But as you sit by this fire, the scent of pine smoke in your nose, and the wind sighing in the trees, you realize one thing: you're in it now, and there's no turning back. The veteran stops talking for a moment, staring into the embers as though he sees ghosts there. You don't dare break the silence. You can almost hear the faint echoes of those long-forgotten battles in the crackle of the fire, the clang of metal, and the screams of the dying carried on the wind. Then, as if snapping out of a trance, he leans forward. "Get some rest," he rasps. "Tomorrow, you'll need your strength." You nod, pulling your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The night stretches ahead, cold and endless. But even in the darkness, the stories of medieval warfare burn bright in your mind. Section 2. You wake to the clatter of armor and the soft rustle of mail against cloth. The dawn is a weak thing, a pale glow that doesn't quite chase away the shadows of the night before. You rise slowly, muscles stiff from the hard ground, and take in the ragged line of soldiers around you. Their faces are pale in the morning light, eyes already hardened by the knowledge of what waits ahead. The march begins with the hollow beat of boots on frozen earth. Each step rattles up your spine, the weight of your gear making you feel like you're wading through molasses. The air is sharp and cold, but it's not enough to chase away the smell of sweat and fear. You can taste it on your tongue, bitter and metallic. You trudge on, your mind wandering to the battles you've only heard of, the thunder of hooves, the clash of steel, the cries that echo across the field. You think of knights, those shining symbols of power and privilege. But up close, there's nothing shiny about them. Their armor is dented and scarred, each mark a story of survival or failure. And the swords they carry? They're not polished museum pieces, they're battered tools of death, kept sharp only because dull blades are worse. Historians still argue whether the chivalric codes that knights boasted of were ever truly upheld in the heat of battle. Honor, it seems, is a luxury that slips away when survival is all that matters. The line of men stretches on, a serpent of steel and cloth, weaving through the forest edge. The banners overhead faded crests of noble houses flap limply in the chill breeze. You can't help but notice how these banners, meant to inspire, seem more like grim reminders of who holds your fate. You pause for a moment, shifting the weight of your shield. The wood is splintered along the rim, the iron boss in the center cold against your palm. Each dent, Each scar tells a tale of how close death has come, and you know it'll come closer before the day is done. One of the soldiers beside you, wiry man with a crooked nose, grins and says, "Heard the archers will be up front today. They say it's a good sign." You're not so sure. You've seen what arrows can do, how they can snuff out a life in the span of a breath. A good sign for some, perhaps, but not for those caught in their path. The army halts as the sun claws its way above the treetops. The commanders, lords, and knights astride their horses gather to confer. Their voices are low and urgent, though you can't make out the words. You watch them, their bright cloaks and polished helms, and wonder if they feel the same knot of fear twisting in your gut. Quirky fact for you. Some knights believe that rubbing their blades with garlic before battle would keep them from slipping in their grip. Nothing like garlic breath and death, right? The horns sound a deep, mournful call that seems to vibrate in your bones. It's time. You swallow hard and take your place in the line, the soldiers to either side of you doing the same. There's a hush that falls over the field, a breath held in the cold morning air. You can feel the weight of it pressing on your chest. Then, with a cry that rips through the silence, the charge begins. You move forward, each step an effort of will, each breath a prayer. The world narrows to the weight of your shield, the grip of your sword, and the hammering of your heart. You see the enemy ahead, men, just like you, faces drawn and pale, eyes wide with the same fear. There's no honor in this moment, no grand ideals, just survival. The clash is sudden, bone-rattling. The impact jars your teeth, the scream of steel on steel like a wail of the damned. You hack and thrust, your arm aching with every swing. There's no time to think, no time to breathe, only the rhythm of fight and survive. Around you, the field is chaos. Men fall, screaming or silent, cut down in the press of bodies. You see a banner fall, trampled underfoot as the line surges forward. Blood slicks the ground, turning the earth to red mud. The smell of iron and sweat and something fouler fills your nose. Historians still argue whether battles were decided more by the courage of the soldiers or the cunning of the commanders. You suspect it's a little of both, but in the crush of bodies and clash of swords, all you care about is the next breath. You're shoved sideways, your shield nearly torn from your grip. A soldier in a dented helm looms over you, his sword arcing down. You twist, the blade grazing your shoulder, and ram your shield into his face. He staggers back, and you don't think you drive your sword forward, feeling the jolt as it finds flesh. It's over in a heartbeat. He falls, and you stumble back, gasping. There's no time to mourn, no time to feel anything but the cold bite of fear and the relentless push of the battle. You fight on, each step a gamble, each breath a fleeting gift. The sun is higher now, though it seems pale and distant. The battle rages around you, a churning sea of steel and blood. You wonder how long it can last, how long you can last. Your arms ache, your legs tremble, but you keep moving because there's no other choice. A horn sounds again, and the line shifts, the press of bodies easing for a moment. You take a ragged breath, your throat raw from shouting, and look around. The ground is littered with the dead and dying, their blood soaking into the earth. The air is thick, with the stink of sweat and fear, and the acrid tang of spent arrows. You feel a hand on your shoulder, another soldier, his face streaked with dirt and blood. He nods, and you nod back, wordless. There's no need for words. You both know that this is only the beginning. Section 3. The battle lulls for a moment, just long enough for the archers to step forward. You stand there, breath ragged, the weight of your sword, a familiar ache in your hand. The archers knock their arrows, each one a slender promise of death, and you feel a shiver run down your spine. The air seems to hold its breath, every soldier poised between life and the next world. The first volley arcs overhead, a black rain against the pale sky. You watch the arrows fly, 1,000 lethal slivers singing through the air. It's beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a storm roll in across the hills, unstoppable and indifferent. The arrows land with a sound like hail on a roof, a sharp, rattling rain that turns men into pincushions. Some scream, some fall without a sound, and the line surges forward, desperate to close the gap before the next volley. You duck behind your shield, The thud of arrows against the wood, a drumbeat you'll hear in your dreams. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval archers believed that spitting on the arrowhead before shooting would guide it truer to its target. Seems like a strange superstition, but in the heat of battle, you'll believe in anything that keeps you alive. Historians still argue whether the longbow or the crossbow was the deadlier weapon. The longbow could rain arrows at a terrifying speed, while the crossbow's bolt could punch through armor like a spear. You're in no mood to pick favorites as you watch a crossbowman calmly crank back his string and loose a quarrel into the melee. The enemy is close, now closer than comfort. Their own archers cutting down men in your line as the air fills with the hiss of fletched death. You press on, each step a prayer, your breath coming in hot bursts that fog your vision. The ground is slick underfoot, churned to a red paste by boots and hooves alike. A shout from your left, a young soldier, barely more than a boy, clutching his arm as blood leaks through his fingers. You want to help, but there's no time, no space. A second later, he's gone, swallowed by the press of bodies and the next wave of arrows. You raise your shield again, the weight of it a comfort and a curse. Each arrow that strikes it rattles up your arm, a jolt that makes your teeth clench. The line moves forward, slow as the turning of the seasons, but forward nonetheless. You glimpse the enemy's archers for a moment, perched behind their lines, boughs singing in unison. Their faces are hidden by helmets and the shadows of the forest beyond, but, they're just men, two men who would rather be anywhere else. A soldier beside you laughs, a harsh bark of sound that cuts through the din. If we survive this, he says, I'm buying the biggest jug of ale in the village. You grin back, though you know the odds are against you both. Still, the promise of warm ale and a soft bed is enough to keep your feet moving. The line shudders as the archers pull back, retreating behind the infantry. Their quivers are nearly empty, the ground littered with the spent shafts of their deadly rain. The real fight begins again, close and personal, as you slam shoulder to shoulder with the men around you. The clang of steel is deafening, a constant roar in your ears. You lose track of time, each moment a blur of motion and impact. The sun creeps higher, its pale light harsh and unforgiving, but you barely notice. Your world is the swing of your sword, the crash of shields, the ragged breath in your lungs. You remember the veterans' tales by the campfire, the stories of knights who waded through seas of arrows, banners torn and bloodied. He said it was like walking through a rainstorm of death, and now you know he wasn't lying. Historians still argue whether medieval armies truly understood the power of archery, or if they simply threw arrows at the enemy and hoped for the best. You suspect it's a bit of both, but in the chaos, the difference hardly matters. A sudden impact throws you off balance, a shield slams into your side, and you stagger, nearly losing your footing. You catch yourself just in time, planting your feet in the muck and raising your sword once more. Around you, the battle surges and recedes like a living thing, each breath a fight to stay upright. You see a crossbowman kneeling at the edge of the fray, calmly reloading his weapon. The image is almost surreal, like a craftsman, plying his trade in the middle of a storm. He raises his head, and for a moment, your eyes meet. Then he fires, and you duck, just in time, the bolt slicing the air where your face had been. You scramble back to your feet, your pulse a frantic drumbeat. The world narrows again. You, your sword, the next breath, the next heartbeat. That's all that matters. A final volley of arrows darkens the sky, and you raise your shield one last time. The sound is deafening, a rattle and clatter that seems to go on forever. When it stops, the silence is almost worse. You lower your shield, your arm numb, and see the field littered with the fallen. The archer's song is done, for now, but you know they'll be back. You take a shaky breath, tasting the copper tang of blood in the air, and step forward into the fray once more. Section 4. You find yourself knee-deep in the mess of the battlefield. Each step is a struggle, the churned-up earth sucking at your boots, clinging like a curse. Mud, blood, and splintered shields mixed together underfoot, and you realize that the ground itself seems to hunger for the lives of men. The sounds of battle echo around you, steel on steel, the low moans of the wounded, and the sharp cries of men locked in mortal combat. The air is thick with the smell of sweat and the bitter tang of blood, a smell that seeps into your clothes and skin, clinging to you like a second shadow. Historians still argue whether the muddy fields of medieval battles were more dangerous than the blades that cut through them. You believe it, your foot nearly slips in a patch of slick earth, and you feel a moment of terror before you right yourself. You push on, your breath ragged in your throat, eyes scanning for the next threat. You see a knight stagger, his foot caught in the treacherous mud, and in that instant, his enemy's blade finds him. A flash of steel, a wet gasp, and he crumples into the dirt, another life claimed by the hungry ground. The mud is everywhere, caking your boots, streaking your face, weighing down your limbs. You can feel it seeping into the small cracks in your armor, cold and wet against your skin. It's as if the earth itself conspires to pull you down, to make you part of the battlefield forever. A soldier beside you shouts, his voice hoarse and desperate. He's lost his helmet, and the mud in his hair makes him look like some primeval creature. His eyes are wild, and he swings his sword with a frantic energy that's as much terror as it is fury. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval soldiers believed that the spirits of the dead lived in the mud, and that stepping in certain places would anger them. Superstition or not, you can't help but feel that each step is a negotiation with those who fell before. The fighting slows for a moment, a lull in the madness, and you take the chance to catch your breath. You glance around, seeing how the battlefield has become a landscape of churned earth and broken bodies. The sun is a pale disk overhead, the clouds hanging low and heavy, as if the sky itself mourns the slaughter below. You press on, the weight of your shield a constant companion. Each time you lift your foot, the mud clings to it, threatening to pull you down. You think of the tales you've heard of warriors who drowned in the muck, never struck by sword or arrow, but claimed by the earth itself. A shout draws your attention, and you turn to see a group of enemy soldiers trying to flank your line. You move to meet them, your boots sucking free of the mud with each step. Your sword is heavy in your hand, but you raise it high, the blade flashing in the cold light. The clash is sudden and brutal. You feel the shock of impact through your arm as your sword meets a shield, the force jarring your shoulder. You push forward, the mud sucking at your feet, and swing again. The enemy stumbles, slipping in the treacherous earth, and you take the opening, your blade biting deep. Around you, the line holds barely. Men fight and die in the mud, each step a battle in itself. You can hear the grunts of effort, the wet slap of bodies hitting the ground, and the ever-present squelch of the muck beneath your boots. Historians still argue whether medieval armies truly understood the danger of fighting in such conditions, or if they simply had no choice. You suspect the latter. No one would choose this if they could avoid it. You pause for a moment, your breath coming in ragged gasps, and glance at the sky. The clouds are darker now, heavy with the promise of rain. You know what that means. More mud, more misery. You steel yourself, gripping your sword tighter, and move forward once more. The line surges, a collective push that drives the enemy back a step at a time. You feel the energy of it, the desperate strength of men who know that falling here means vanishing forever into the hungry earth. Your boots slip and slide, but you keep your feet, each step a small victory. A soldier beside you laughs, a wild, breathless sound. "Can't believe I'm still standing," he gasps. You grin back, though your teeth chatter from the cold and the fear. "Just don't stop," you rasp. The mud's waiting for you if you do. The fighting shifts again, the line bending and flexing like a living thing. You find yourself shoulder to shoulder with men you've never met, all of you bound by the shared struggle of staying upright in this sea of blood and earth. You wonder, in a distant part of your mind, how this will be remembered. Will they sing songs of this battle, of the mud and the blood and the bitter cold? Or will it be just another nameless slaughter, swallowed by the earth and forgotten by the world? For now, there's no time for questions, no time for doubts. You take another step, your foot squelching in the muck, and raise your sword again. Around you, the battle rages on, and the earth beneath your feet drinks deep of the blood of men. Section 5. You press deeper into the fray, the clash of arms a constant roar in your ears. The line heaves and shudders around you, each man pushing forward with grim determination. But there, looming above the heads of the fighting men, the true menace emerges: the siege engines. From the crest of a low hill, you watch the catapults and trebuchets creak into life, their wooden arms groan under the strain, ropes and pulleys squealing as they're wound tight. The engineers' ragged men with soot-streaked faces work with the single-minded focus of craftsmen at their trade. You can't help but marvel at the brutal artistry of it all, even as a rock the size of a man's head smashes into the earth just ahead of you. The ground shakes with the impact, a low, thunderous thud that rattles your bones. Dirt and rock spray into the air, stinging your face and blinding you for a moment. You wipe your eyes with the back of your glove, blinking hard as another stone comes crashing down, this one landing squarely in the ranks of men just to your left. The sickening crack of bone and the sharp cries of the dying fill the air. Quirky fact for you: some siege engineers believe that adding the blood of a sacrificed animal to the mortar would make the engine stronger. An odd bit of folklore that speaks to the desperation of those who built them. Historians still argue whether these engines were true marvels of engineering or just cobbled together monstrosities that happened to work. As you watch another stone arc gracefully through the sky, you realize it doesn't matter either way, they're here to kill you. The call goes out to brace, and you duck behind your shield as the next volley comes in. You feel the impact through your feet, a deep, rattling shudder that makes you wonder if the earth itself is about to crack open. Around you, men press closer together, shields raised high. The line of defense is much about comfort as protection. A man beside you mutters a prayer under his breath, words lost in the chaos. You can't hear them, but you feel the weight of them, the desperate plea for some god to intervene. You're not sure if any god is listening today. The catapults pause for a moment, the engineers resetting their machines. You take the chance to scan the enemy lines. The walls of the castle loom in the distance, gray stone streaked with soot and blood. Archers line the parapets, their arrows poised to rain death down on anyone foolish enough to come close. And yet, closer you must God, there's no other way. The order comes to move forward, and you force your legs to obey. Each step feels like wading through molasses, the ground pitted with craters and littered with the dead. You skirt the edge of a fresh impact, the broken bodies of men strewn like discarded dolls. The sight twists your stomach, but there's no time to linger. A trebuchet launches another stone, this one larger than the last. You watch it rise into the sky, a dark shape against the pale clouds. It seems almost to hang there for a moment, suspended by the whim of fate, before it comes crashing down with devastating finality. The ground bucks beneath you, and you're thrown to your knees, your shield clattering against the earth. You scramble back to your feet, ears ringing. Around you, men lie groaning, some trying to rise, others ominously still. You step over a fallen comrade, forcing yourself not to look too closely at his broken body. There will be time to mourn later if you live to see later. Historians still argue whether the defenders of these fortresses felt any real fear when the engines began their work, or if they simply accepted it as the price of survival. You suspect it's a bit of both. Fear is the mortar of these walls, each stone laid with trembling hands. The air is thick with dust and smoke, the sun a pale disk barely visible through the haze. The catapults and trebuchets keep working, each launch a grim punctuation to the day's slaughter. You feel each impact in your bones, a steady drumbeat of destruction. A man ahead of you stumbles, the weight of his shield too much to bear. He collapses, gasping, and you step past him, your own limbs shaking with exhaustion. You wonder how much longer you can keep going, how much longer any of you can. And then, as if the gods themselves have decided to mock you, a flaming projectile soars through the air, trailing smoke and embers like a comet. It crashes into the outer wall of the castle, splintering stone and sending a gout of fire into the sky. The defenders atop the walls flinch, some disappearing behind the parapets as the flames lick hungrily at the stones. Quirky fact for you: some armies use barrels of quicklime ice, the same stuff that can eat through flesh mixed with pitch to make their fire projectiles burn even hotter. It's the kind of medieval horror that makes you grateful for every breath you still have. The shout goes up, "Forward, forward!" And you press on, though your heart screams for rest. Each step is a small victory, each breath a defiance of the engines that roar and crash around you. The siege is just beginning, and you know this is only the first taste of what's to come. But as you shoulder your way forward, mud and blood caking your boots, you remind yourself of one simple truth. If you stop, you die. And so you keep moving, the thunder of catapults echoing in your bones as you fight for every inch of ground. Section 6. You slip through the shifting line of men, the air filled with the low, ominous groan of wooden structures under strain. The siege towers, monstrous things of timber and iron, roll forward with glacial inevitability. You see them looming above the field, dark shapes that seem to swallow the very sky. Men strain at the ropes and levers, heaving these ponderous beasts forward inch by inch. The wheels crunch over the churned earth, each turn of the axle, a creak that echoes in your bones. The towers are battered and scorched, patched with bits of hide and scrap wood testament to days of relentless assault. Inside the towers, soldiers wait in the shadows, their breath steaming in the cold air. You know what they're feeling, the pounding of their hearts, the sweat running cold down their spines. The towers are a promise of death and glory, a tight, airless climb that ends in the clash of steel at the walls. Quirky fact for you, some besieging armies would hang captured prisoners in front of their towers, hoping to break the defenders' spirits. A brutal tactic, and not always effective, but it speaks to the depths men would sink in this endless dance of survival. Historians still argue whether siege towers were truly unstoppable or just another tool in the brutal chess game of medieval warfare. As you watch them roll closer to the walls, you know that for the men inside, there's no turning back. A sharp cry cuts through the cold air, and you glance up to see defenders on the walls pouring boiling water, sometimes even oil down onto the towers. The hiss of steam rises, and you hear the muffled screams of those caught in the scalding rain. The stench of burned flesh curls into the air, a sickening counterpoint to the acrid tang of smoke. You press closer to the tower ahead of you, a towering monstrosity that looms like a promise of salvation or damnation. The wooden slats are scorched, some splintered by enemy stones. You know that climbing inside is both refuge and prison. The only way forward is up, and the only way down is defeat. The order comes to advance, and you move with the tide of men, your shield raised high against the arrows that hiss from the walls. The towers groan and sway as they roll forward, the ground trembling with each ponderous step. Inside, the darkness is almost complete, lit only by the thin slits in the wooden walls that let in ragged shafts of light. You squeeze in with the others, the press of bodies close and suffocating. The air is thick with sweat and fear, the scent of men who know they may never see the sun again. The tower shudders as a stone crashes against its side, the impact rattling your teeth. You grip your sword tighter, the leather of the hilt slick in your palm. Around you, men murmur prayers or curses, each breath a cloud of white in the chill air. Historians still argue whether the men inside these towers felt hope or terror as they climbed. You feel both hope that the tower will reach the wall before it's torn apart, terror that you'll be inside when it falls. The ascent is slow, each step on the wooden ladder a battle of its own. The tower sways with each footfall, and you feel the rough boards shift under your boots. You try not to think of what lies ahead of the wall, the defenders, the clash that awaits. Instead, you focus on the next step, the next breath. A soldier ahead of you slips, his boot catching on a rung slick with blood. He curses, regains his balance, and keeps climbing. There's no room for weakness here, no time for fear. The tower is a crucible, and only those who keep moving will see the other side. You can hear the battle outside, the crash of stones, the cries of the dying, the creak of the great engines still flinging death through the air. But here, inside the tower, it's a different kind of hell. The slow, inevitable climb, the knowledge that every step brings you closer to the maelstrom. Quirky fact for you, some siege towers were covered in fresh animal hides to help protect them from fire arrows. You wonder how many poor beasts gave their skins for this grim march. The tower lurches forward again, the final stretch. You feel the change in the air, the sudden brightness. As the top hatch is flung open, you're nearly there, nearly at the wall. You can taste the tang of iron and smoke on your tongue, feel the sweat running cold down your back. The man ahead of you pushes up through the hatch, and for a moment, you see the world outside. The gray stone of the wall, the defenders poised and ready, the sky a bruised purple overhead. And then you're there, climbing out into the light, your shield raised, your breath a ragged gasp. The clash comes instantly. Defender lunges at you, spear point flashing. You twist, the blade glancing off your shield, and swing your sword in reply. The clang of steel on steel sings in your ears, the smell of sweat and blood sharp and electric. Historians still argue whether the first men out of the towers were the bravest or the most doomed. As you shove forward, the wall beneath your boots and the enemy at arm's length, you know it doesn't matter. There's no room for heroes, here only survivors. You fight with everything you have, each breath a battle, each heartbeat a victory. Around you, the world narrows to the ring of steel and the desperate need to stay alive. The towers behind you creak and groan, the engines of war still singing their deadly song, and you keep going because there's no other way. Section 7. You force your way up the wall, boots slipping on the blood-slicked stones. Around you, the clash of steel echoes like the tolling of 100 iron bells, each note a promise of pain. You feel the cold stone against your back, the breath of defenders and attackers alike steaming in the cold air as the melee surges back and forth. The lords of this war sit on their horses just beyond the walls, their bright cloaks whipping in the wind like banners of defiance. They watch with keen eyes, barking commands and jabbing with their spurred heels when the lines waver. From up here, they seem almost above the fray removed from the dirt and blood that soaks your boots. But you know better. Their feuds, their endless hunger for power, are what drives this madness. You remember stories from the campfire show these lords' petty rivalries could tear apart entire kingdoms. Historians still argue whether these conflicts were sparked by ambition or desperation. But as you duck another swing of a defender's blade, you realize it hardly matters when you're the one paying the price in sweat and blood. A crossbow bolt whistles past your ear, slamming into the wall with a thud that makes your teeth ache. You flinch instinctively, your breath coming in ragged gasps. Beside you, a man with a tattered surcoat lets out a shout and charges forward, his sword flashing. He slips on the stones, his feet skidding out from under him, and he goes down in a heap. You don't have time to check if he gets up again. The defenders fight like cornered beasts. Their faces are set in grim masks, eyes bright with desperation. Each swing of their swords is a prayer to whatever god they believe might be watching. You can't blame them. This is their home, their families huddled somewhere behind these walls, praying they'll hold. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval fortresses had secret sally port-shitten doors that allowed the defenders to slip out and harass attackers from behind. You wonder if one is hidden nearby, waiting to spill out a fresh wave of fury. The line of attackers surges forward, the weight of numbers finally starting to tell. You feel it in the way the defenders' shoulders sag, the quick glances they throw at one another as they fight to hold every inch of stone. They know it's slipping away, the strength of their walls not enough to hold back the tide of men and steel. You lunge forward, your sword biting into a gap between a defender's plates. He lets out a sharp cry and goes down, and you step over him without a second glance. There's no time to linger, no room for hesitation. The fight is a dance of inches, each breath bought with blood. A shout from below draws your eye for a moment. Tone of the lords has dismounted, striding forward with his gilded sword raised. His armor gleams, each plate etched with the crest of his house, but you know that beneath the gold, he's as mortal as you. You wonder if he feels the fear that claws at your belly, or if he's convinced himself that his birthright will keep death at bay. Historians still argue whether these feudal lords truly believed in the divine right they claimed, or if it was just another lie to keep their soldiers marching. You're too busy trying to stay alive to care much either way. The push forward is relentless. You slip on the stones again, catching yourself on your shield, and in that moment you see the defenders face exhausted, hollow-eyed, but still fighting. You feel a flicker of something, almost like respect. Then, the next blade comes at you, and you're back to the fight. The lord's banners flap above the melee, bright scraps of silk that seem almost mocking in their splendor. You remember the stories of how some lords would change sides mid-battle if they thought it would bring them more power. There's no loyalty in these feuds, no honor that isn't stained with the blood of men like you. You fight on, your muscles burning, your breath ragged. The clang of steel is a constant rhythm, a music that drowns out thought. Each man you face is another chance to live or die, and you cling to the thought of living like a drowning man to driftwood. Quirky fact for you. Some knights carried tiny relics of splinters of bone, scraps of cloth sewn into their tunics for protection. You wonder if the defenders here have done the same. Each man a walking shrine to the desperate hope that faith can turn aside steel. The lords beyond the walls shout commands you can't hear, their voices lost in the din. Their feud is why you're here, but it's not enough to keep you upright. It's the man beside you, the one who's fought at your side since the first clash of swords. You spare him a glance, a quick nod, and he nods back. In this moment, that's all the loyalty you need. The press of bodies surges again. The defenders force back step by step. You feel the wall beneath your boots, cold and slick, and you wonder if it will hold. The air is thick with the stink of sweat and blood, the cries of the wounded mingling with the sharp clash of steel. Historians still argue whether these feuds were born of greed or necessity. Here, in the chaos of the wall, you know one thing for certain. It's the common men like you who pay the price, inch by inch, drop by drop. You fight on, each breath a prayer, each step a gamble. The lords watch from their horses, their eyes bright with the fire of ambition. You wonder if they'll remember your name when the fighting's done. You know they won't, but you fight anyway. Section 8. The battle churns around you, a swirling sea of steel and screams. In the thick of it, you see them, mercenaries, wild-eyed, and hungry for coin. Their armor is mismatched, their weapons looted from a dozen battlefields, but there's no mistaking the ferocity in their eyes. These are not men who fight for kings or country, they fight for the promise of silver in their pockets and blood on their blades. They surge forward, a tide of violence that knows no loyalty but to the highest bidder. You catch a glimpse of Oni a giant, of a man with a beard matted with blood and a laugh that cuts through the din. He swings an axe that seems too large for any mortal man, each stroke leaving ruin in its wake. Historians still argue whether mercenaries brought more ruin than salvation to medieval battles. Some say they were the backbone of any real campaign, others that they were little better than wolves turned loose on the world. As the giant's axe carves a path through the press of men, you're inclined to believe the latter. The man beside you spits in the mud and mutters, "Better to fight beside a farmer with something to protect than a mercenary who'll sell your head for a penny." You nod, though you're too busy staying alive to offer much else. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval mercenaries like to dye their armor bright colors to stand out. Imagine fighting in a blaze of peacock green or fiery red. It's almost enough to make you laugh in the middle of the slaughter. The mercenaries fight with a savage joy that's as terrifying as it is impressive. They move with the fluid grace of men who've lived their whole lives with a blade in hand, ducking and weaving through the chaos as if it's a dance they know by heart. Each one is a force unto himself, and the defenders recoil from them as if from a pack of wolves. You find yourself shoulder to shoulder with one of Thema wiry man, with a patch over one eye and a grin that never wavers. "Stay close," he says, his voice a low rasp. "I've no interest in dying today." He fights like a whirlwind, his sword a blur of motion, and you follow in his wake, grateful for the brief reprieve. Historians still argue whether these battlefield legendsmen, who carved their names in blood and iron, were truly as unstoppable as the stories claim. Watching the one-eyed mercenary cut down two men in a single breath, you start to think there's some truth to the tales. The line wavers, then breaks, and the mercenaries surge forward with a roar. You're carried along, the press of bodies shoving you forward whether you will it or not. The enemy gives ground, forced back step by step by the fury of men who fight for nothing but themselves. A defender tries to stand his ground, a young man with eyes too bright and a sword too heavy for his arms. The one-eyed mercenary doesn't even pause. He slips past the boy's guard, his blade flashing in the half-light. The boy crumples, and the mercenary moves on without a second glance. You want to look away, but you can't. This is the price of survival, the strong preying on the weak, the desperate clinging to the scraps of life left in the dirt. Quirky fact for you. Some mercenaries had their own battle saints, patron spirits they swore protected them from harm. Saint Maurice, Saint Georgia names, whispered like prayers in the heat of battle. You wonder if it's faith or madness that drives them forward. The battle surges around you, the mercenaries at its heart, a cyclone of blades and howls. You keep your shield up, your breath coming in ragged gasps, and follow the one-eyed mercenary deeper into the fray. There's no time to think, No time to question, only the next heartbeat, the next swing of your sword. Historians still argue whether mercenaries were the villains of these wars or simply the men who understood them best. Here, in the chaos and ruin, you think they're both. Their savagery is a mirror held up to the lords who pay them, a reflection of the world as it truly is. The sun is low now, the light fading to a dull, bloody red. The battlefield is a churned sea of mud and bodies. The cries of the wounded a dirge that never ends. The mercenaries press on, their laughter sharp and wild as they carve their path. The one-eyed man glances back at you, his grin still in place. "Keep your feet," he growls, the mud's just as deadly as the blade. You nod, swallowing hard, and dig your boots in deeper. Around you, the battle slows, the lines of men catching their breath. For a moment, the world holds still, the only sound, the ragged breathing of the living and the soft sigh of the dying. You don't know what comes next. The lords beyond the walls still plot and scheme. The mercenaries still fight for silver and survival. But you know one thing for certain. As long as there's blood to be spilled and coin to be earned, the mercenaries will be there, carving their legend in the mud and the dark. And you'll be there too, because there's no other choice. Section 9. You stand with the mercenaries for a moment longer, your breath coming in hot clouds in the cold air, but then a hush falls over the battlefield, a pause in the ceaseless grind of steel and cries. A line of priests emerges from the rear, their white robes already stained with soot and blood, and they move among the living and the dead like ghosts. Their voices rise in a low chant, Latin words you can't quite catch but feel in your bones. Some soldiers pause to listen, dropping to one knee as the priests pass, their heads bowed beneath the weight of holy words. You feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold. The church is here, and its blessing and its curse hangs heavy over the field. One of the priests carries a relic high, a shard of bone set in a gold reliquary that gleams despite the smoke and grime. He holds it aloft, and the soldiers nearest him press their hands to their chests, lips moving in silent prayer. You watch them, the faith in their eyes like a light in the gloom. Historians still argue whether these relics truly inspired the men or if they were just another tool of control. You wonder the same, but in this moment, as the priest's chant fills the air, you see how even the faintest glimmer of hope can steady a man's shaking hands. The church's presence is a double-edged blade. Its blessing might bring courage, but its curses can be just as real. You've heard tales of priests who refused absolution to cowards, threatening their souls with eternal fire if they faltered. The promise of salvation and the fear of damnation, two sides of the same coin. Quirky fact for you. Some soldiers believe that the mere touch of a relic could stop a blade in battle. A comforting thought, though you're not sure you'd wager your life on it. The priests pass by, their chants fading into the din of the renewed battle. You shoulder your shield and push forward, the relic's glow still bright in your mind. Around you, the men seem to fight harder, their eyes alight with that fragile spark of faith. But faith alone won't stop an arrow or turn aside a sword. The enemy is waiting, their own priests standing watch from the walls, their own relics held high. You wonder if the same prayers echo in their minds, if the same fear of damnation drives them to strike harder, hold longer. Historians still argue whether the church's role in these wars was one of guidance or of manipulation. Here, in the churn of battle, you see both. The priests offer blessings for those who fight and comfort for those who fall. But always there's the shadow of the cross behind the sword. The line surges again, the clash of shields and swords, a relentless rhythm. You find yourself facing a knight in a surcoat marked with a cross, his blade flashing as he swings at you. You block, the impact shivering up your arm, and for a moment you see the glint of something around his neck, a small silver cross that bounces with each breath. He fights with the strength of conviction, his eyes bright beneath his helm. You wonder if it's faith that drives his arm, or if it's just the will to live one more day. The question fades as you parry his next blow, your own breath ragged in the cold air. Quirky fact for you. In some battles, priests would anoint knights' weapons before the fight, a ritual meant to turn every stroke into an act of divine justice. Looking at the blood-soaked ground, you can't help but think the gods must have grown tired of these endless prayers. The knight falters for a moment, his foot slipping on the slick stones, and you seize the chance. Your blade bites deep, and he falls back with a cry. You don't linger, you know better than to look too long into the eyes of a dying man. You move on, your boots slipping in the wet earth, the chant of the priest still a low murmur in the back of your mind. Around you, the church's presence is everywhere. Banners marked with crosses wave above the chaos, and the smell of incense clings to the air, a sharp sweetness beneath the stink of blood and sweat. The priests move among the wounded now, their hands raised in blessing or last rites. Historians still argue whether these rituals brought real comfort or just another layer of fear. You think of the dying men whispering prayers with their last breaths and wonder if, in that moment, faith is enough. The battle surges forward, the lines shifting and grinding, and you keep moving with them. The priest's voices fade into the roar of steel, but the memory of their chants lingers in your mind. A promise of salvation, a threat of damnation both as real as the blade in your hand. You fight on, because what else is there to do? The church's blessing is a balm for some, a curse for others. For you, it's just another weight on your shoulders as you push forward. Each step a prayer to survive. Section 10. You move deeper into the fight, the clash of steel against steel blending into a dull roar that seems to fill the world. The line of men surges and flexes, each man a link in a living chain of iron and resolve. And always, at the heart of it, the sound of armor heavy and cold, clanking with every breath. Your own armor weighs on you like a second skin, each movement an effort of will. The metal plates are dented and scarred, the straps cutting into your shoulders, but you're grateful for every inch of it. You've seen what a blade can do to unarmored flesh, and you'll take the chafing over the bite of cold steel any day. Historians still argue whether knights truly clanked and rattled like iron barrels, or if the best-made armor was quiet as a whisper. You know that in this chaos, every rattle is a promise that you're still alive. The ground beneath your feet is slick with blood and churned mud, the weight of your armor dragging at your limbs. You watch the knights at the front, their polished plate, a dazzling promise of survival or of a target for every arrow in the sky. They move with practiced ease, each piece of armor shaped to turn aside a blow. But even the best-made plate has its weaknesses, and you see men fall as spears, find the gaps at their joints, or slip beneath their raised arms. Quirky fact for you. Some knights stuffed bits of horsehair or even dried grass into their helmets to soften the blow of a strike. It's not exactly comfortable, but when death comes swinging, you'll take any edge you can find. The press of bodies forces you closer to the front, your shield tight against your chest. You feel each impact as if it's hammering on your bones, each clang of metal a prayer that this blow won't be the one that finds the gap. Beside you, a knight in a battered surcoat swings his sword in great looping arcs, each stroke ringing out like a bell. His helmet is dented, the visor hanging loose, but his eyes blaze with determination. You fight at his side, your sword a steady rhythm in the chaos. Historians still argue whether knights fought with the reckless abandon of legend or the cold precision of trained killers. Here, in the crush of battle, you see both. Each blow is driven by the desperation to live and the training that turns panic into muscle memory. The knight beside you stumbles as a mace crashes into his shoulder, the blow glancing off his pauldron with a screech of metal. He grunts, recovers, and brings his sword down in a vicious stroke that sends his attacker sprawling. He spares you a brief glance, a flicker of recognition beneath the sweat and grime, and you nod back. In this moment, that's all the conversation you need. The battle surges forward again, the line pressing against the defenders. You feel the weight of your helmet, the narrow slit of your visor turning the world into a tunnel of motion and noise. Each breath is hot and damp, the air inside the helm thick with the stink of your own sweat. Quirky fact for you. Some knights wore padded, cap-scalled arming caps beneath their helmets, stuffed with wool or linen. They soaked up the sweat and the fear, and if you were lucky, they took a bit of the sting out of a blow, too. You push on, your boots slipping in the mud, your arms screaming with fatigue. The line holds, though just barely, and you know that if you falter, the whole chain could break. Around you, men fight and fall, their cries swallowed by the roar of battle. A defender lunges at you, his spear darting like a snake. You twist aside, feeling the blade scrape against your breastplate and bring your sword down hard. The impact jars your wrist, but the defender crumples, and you take a step forward into the space he leaves behind. Historians still argue whether these battles were won by the strength of armor or the skill of the men inside it. Watching the knights around you, you see how both matter and how even the best armor can't save a man who hesitates. The clash of steel goes on and on, each moment a question of who will falter first. Your arms burn, your breath comes in ragged gasps, but you keep moving. The armor rattles with every step, a music of survival that fills your ears. You catch sight of another knight, his shield painted with the crest of his house a rearing stag, proud and defiant. He wades through the melee like a force of nature, his sword rising and falling in a dance of deadly grace. For a moment, you almost believe the old tales of chivalry and honor. But then you see the blood on his blade, the look in his eyes, and you remember there's no poetry here, only the brutal rhythm of survival. Quirky fact for you, some knights had their armor engraved with prayers or symbols, tiny runes of hope etched into the steel. You wonder if those prayers echo in the clash of iron around you, or if they're just one more layer of weight. The line wavers, then surges forward again. You feel the push of men behind you, the press of bodies that refuses to let you stop. You raise your sword, your shield tight to your chest, and you fight on. Because in this world of steel and blood, you have no other choice. Section 11. You stagger through the ranks, the clash of armor and the hiss of steel filling the air like some grim symphony. But there's another note beneath it, an insistent, nauseating tang that curls into your lungs and sets your stomach roiling. It's the scent of the battlefield, the perfume of death that clings to your hair and skin no matter how you scrub or pray. You taste it in the back of your throat, the coppery bite of blood, the sour reek of sweat, the acrid tang of fear, and worse still, the rank stench of open bowels and split bellies, a scent that burrows into your mind and never truly leaves. Some men say you grow used to, others say you simply learn to fight through the retching. Historians still argue whether medieval warriors tried to mask the stench with sprigs of herbs stuffed into their helmets, or if they simply accepted it as part of the price of war. You can't imagine a handful of rosemary would make much difference when the air itself seems to rot around you. A knight crashes past you, his armor blackened with soot and blood. He doesn't pause, doesn't falter, he's a juggernaut in steel, moving as if the stench doesn't touch him. You envy that, even as you fight to keep your own stomach from rebelling. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval healers believed that a battlefield stench could carry disease like a miasma death itself, hanging in the air, seeping into your lungs with every breath. They weren't entirely wrong. You feel every cough and sputter as another risk in this dance with mortality. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows that twist and writhe across the blood-slick ground. Flies buzz thick around the dead, drawn to the sweetness of decay. You swipe one away from your face, the motion almost casual now, just another nuisance in the endless parade of horrors. You think of the stories you've heard, of soldiers who lost their minds in the aftermath, driven mad by the stink and the slaughter. Historians still argue whether it was the blood, the terror, or the very air itself that broke them. As you step over another fallen man, your boot sinking into the wet earth, you wonder if it's all three. The cries of the wounded rise around you, a wretched chorus of pain. Men clutch at ragged wounds, their breath rattling like broken bells. Some plead for help, others simply scream a long, unending wail that drills into your skull and makes you want to run. But there's nowhere to run, no refuge in this place where death is as common as the mud beneath your feet. You glance to your left and see a man crawling, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. His face is a mask of dirt and blood, and his hand reaches out as if to catch hold of something that might pull him back from the edge. You can't help him. You can barely help yourself. Quirky fact for you. Medieval armies sometimes sprinkled lavender water on cloths to press against their noses, a feeble attempt to keep the rot at bay. You'd give anything for a breath of sweet air now. You push on, your head swimming. The weight of your armor feels like it's grown heavier with each breath, each step. The stench clings to your tongue, each gasp of air thick and foul. You try not to taste it, try to focus on the fight, but it's always there, an invisible hand pressed to your throat. Historians still argue whether these medieval battlefields were truly as foul as the chroniclers claimed. Standing here, you know that no words can capture the full measure of this horror. It's not just the blood and the fear, it's the sheer suffocating presence of death in every breath you take. A sudden shout breaks your thoughts, and you spin, your sword rising in reflex. A man charges at you, his eyes wide and wild, his breath a ragged wheeze. You meet him with a crash of steel, the impact jarring through your bones. He stinks of blood and panic, and you push back, your shield driving him away. Around you, the line surges forward again, the press of bodies tightening as the battle ebbs and flows. You feel the churn of the ground beneath your boots, the sickening slide of mud and gore. Each step is a negotiation with the earth, each breath a defiance of the reek that threatens to drown you. Quirky fact for you, some medieval soldiers claimed that the smell of blood could drive a man into a killing frenzy kind of madness that took hold in the thick of the slaughter. You wonder if it's true? If the scent in the air has seeped into your very bones, driving you on when reason says you should flee? You fight on, the clash of steel and the ragged breathing of the men around you, the only music in this dance of death. The stench is everywhere, a constant presence that fills your nose, your mouth, your mind, but you keep moving, keep swinging, because there's no other choice. And through it all, you know one thing. This scent, this unholy perfume of blood and sweat and filth will follow you long after the battle ends. Section 12. The battle rages on, but for the peasants caught in the crossfire, there's no glory, no chivalry, only the desperate scramble to survive. You see them everywhere. Farmers with rough hands gripping makeshift weapons, eyes wide with terror as they're pressed into lines that were never meant to hold. The muddy fields that once fed them are trampled under iron-shod hooves, the harvest crushed beneath the boots of knights and soldiers alike. The air is filled with the sharp tang of smoke and the bitter cries of men who never wanted to be here. Historians still argue whether these peasants fought out of duty, fear, or simple desperation. You watch one, now a boy no older than 16, his tunic too big for his skinny frame, a rusted pitchfork clutched in trembling hands. His face is pale, his lips moving in a silent prayer that you suspect he doesn't even believe anymore. Quirky fact for you, some medieval lords actually drafted peasants to fight by threatening to burn their homes if they refused. It's hard to call it patriotism when your choice is the sword or the torch. The line wavers as the peasants are pushed forward, their cries rising in a thin, panicked chorus. They're not warriors, and you can see it in every flinch and every desperate swing of a hayfork turned weapon. They're here because they have no other choice, because the lords who claim their loyalty care more for the silver in their coffers than the sweat of those who till their fields. The battle swallows them all the same. A peasant near you stumbles, his wooden shield little more than a plank hacked from a barn door. He gasps as a blade glances off it, the wood splitting with a sharp crack. His eyes meet yours for a moment wide, pleading, and then he's gone, swallowed by the press of bodies and the pitiless rhythm of steel. You step forward over ground churned to ruin, each step a prayer that you won't slip and vanish beneath the crush. Around you, the peasants fight as best they can, some with the strength of desperation, others with the blank terror of men who know they're already lost. Historians still argue whether these conscripted farmers were ever truly soldiers or just living shields for the Lord's ambitions. You see the answer in every broken hoe swung like a warhammer, in every pair of eyes that flicks back toward the village they left behind. Quirky fact for you. In some places, the peasants carried small charms sewn into their tunic bits of bone or cloth, said to bring luck in battle. You wonder if those charms feel heavy on their chests now, or if the weight of fear has crushed all hope. The ground shakes as a mounted knight charges through the press, his horse's hooves tearing up the earth, eyes rolling white with terror. The peasants scatter before him like leaves in a storm, their ragged line buckling under the force of iron and horseflesh. You see a man try to stand his ground, a scythe in his hands, but the knight's blade flashes down and he crumples like a scarecrow in the wind. You push forward, your own shield tight against your chest, and try not to think of the faces around you. These men should be tending fields, not dying in them. The cries of the peasants rise again, a thin wail that cuts through the roar of battle. They're the first to falter, the first to fall, and you know that for many of them, this field will be the last they'll ever see. You fight on because there's no other choice, but in the back of your mind, you wonder how many more villages will be left empty by the end of this day. Historians still argue whether the peasant levies ever truly made a difference in these battles or if they were simply the first to die. Watching them now, you see the truth in every broken shield and every desperate swing. They're here to buy time for the men with better weapons, better training, and time, it seems, is all they can afford to give. Quirky fact for you: some medieval armies paid peasants in bread and ale for their service, hardly a noble wage for a life offered up in the slaughter. The line wavers again, the peasants pushed back by the weight of trained soldiers. You see them falter, fear, and exhaustion in every motion, but still they stand because to run is to die just as surely as to fight. You raise your sword, your breath ragged in your throat, and press forward with them. The peasants around you are no knights, no lords, but in this moment they're your brothers in arms, bound by the shared need to survive. You don't know their names, don't know their homes, but you see their faces, etched with the same fear that's in your own. You fight because there's no other way, and you hope, in some small part of your mind, that you'll live to see fields green with life again. Because for these Menthese farmers, these conscripts, there's no glory, no songs to be sung. Only the desperate hope that somehow, against the weight of lords and knights and death itself, they'll see another sunrise. Section 13. The battle rages on, and with it comes the grim aftermath that no warrior can escape. The wounded lie in huddled clumps, where the fighting passed them by, the air thick with the low moans of men trying to cling to life. You step carefully among them, the ground beneath your boots sticky with blood and churned earth. The cries of the dying are as sharp as the clash of steel, a reminder that even in victory, there's always a cost. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine was more faith than science. Here, among the makeshift hospitals of the battlefield, you see the truth, a little of both, and not enough of either. The healers, some trained, some little more than butchers move among the fallen, their faces pale and grim. They carry bowls of water turned pink with blood, bandages already stiff with the gore of a dozen others. There's no gentle touch here, no soothing words, only the harsh reality of survival. Quirky fact for you: battlefield surgeons in the Middle Ages often carried their tools in wooden boxes, lined with Velveeta, strange touch of elegance in a place that knows nothing of comfort. You watch as one healer, his robe stained brown, and leans over a man clutching a wound in his belly. The healer works with quick, practiced motions, his hands steady even as the man screams. He packs the wound with moss, of all things, muttering a prayer under his breath. Historians still argue whether moss was truly useful for stopping the bleeding or just a desperate hope. In this place, you take what hope you can find. The air is thick with the scent of blood, and the sharp tang of boiled wine poured over wounds in a futile attempt to cleanse them. A soldier beside you gasps as a healer presses a red-hot iron to a cut in his thigh, the hiss of burning flesh lost in the chorus of pain that surrounds you. You know the stories, of leeches and poultices made from herbs you can't even name, of charms whispered into the ears of the dying to ease their passing. The line between healing and harming is thin, and here, it's often blurred. A young boya page, judging by the fine cloth of his tunic, sits nearby, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. His face is pale, his lips bloodless, as he stares at the bone jutting through his skin. A healer leans over him, his brow furrowed as he sets the limb with a crack that makes your stomach churn. The boy doesn't scream. He just shudders and goes limp, the pain too much for his young body to bear. Quirky fact for you: some medieval surgeons believed that a mixture of wine and crushed garlic would ward off infection. It sounds almost pleasant until you see it poured into an open wound. You move on, your boots sticky with the blood-soaked earth, and see a priest kneeling beside a dying man, his hands raised in final blessing. The soldier's lips move in a whisper you can't hear, his eyes wide with the terror of what comes next. The priest's voice is low and steady, a promise of peace in a place that knows only violence. Historians still argue whether these prayers brought comfort or just the cold shadow of the inevitable. You see the way the dying man's face softens, just for a moment, and you think perhaps the prayers are the only thing that truly matters. The battlefield hospital, if you can call it that, is little more than a cluster of tents and rough shelters. The wounded lie on straw mats or bare earth, their breath fogging in the cold air. The healers work tirelessly, their hands slick with blood, their faces set in grim lines. There's no time to grieve, no time to pause, only the endless cycle of treating the wounded and watching the dying. You pass a man with a wound in his side, the ragged flesh glistening in the dull light. He grips your wrist as you walk by, his eyes wide and pleading. "Tell my wife," he rasps, but whatever words come next are lost in a wet cough that leaves blood on his lips. You nod, though you don't know his name, don't know his wife. In this place, a nod is the only comfort you can offer. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval battlefields saw barber surgeons at workmen who cut hair and cut flesh with the same knives. You wonder if the hands that stitched up wounds today will trim beards tomorrow? The cycle of life and death turning with the same blade? You move on, the cries of the wounded following you like ghosts. The battle still rages somewhere beyond the smoke and the cries. But here, in the shadow of the slaughter, there's only the grim work of tending to those left behind. Historians still argue whether the healers of these medieval armies were true men of mercy or just another face of the war machine. You see the truth in their eyes, the exhaustion, the resolve. Whatever their reasons, they're here, and for the men in their care, that's enough. You take a breath, the stink of blood and burnt flesh filling your lungs, and step forward into the smoke. There's no comfort here, no balm for the soul only, the knowledge that as long as there are men to fight, there will be men to bleed. And in the quiet spaces between the clash of swords, you hear the low chant of prayers, the soft rustle of bandages, and the whispered promise that maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance to survive. Section 14. Night falls slowly over the battlefield, the last light of the sun bleeding out into the cold, dark sky. You feel it like a weight in your bones, the chill of the coming darkness sinking deeper with every breath. Around you, the fighting has slowed, the clash of steel giving way to the low moans of the wounded and the ragged breathing of the living. You trudge through the settling dusk, your feet heavy with exhaustion. The world seems to hold its breath, the silence broken only by the distant crackle of fires and the soft whimper of a man trying to keep the darkness at bay. Historians still argue whether medieval soldiers feared the night more than the battle itself. Here, with the cold air curling around you and the shadows creeping close, you understand why they did. The night is a hunter, patient, and merciless. And in this place of blood and ruin, it feels like it has come to claim every last soul. The men around you huddle close to the flickering campfires, their faces drawn and hollow. Some share rough bread and stale ale, their hands shaking with fatigue. Others sit in silence, staring into the flames as if they might find some measure of comfort in the shifting light. You sink down beside them, grateful for even this meager warmth. Quirky fact for you. Medieval soldiers sometimes believed that the smoke of a campfire could keep evil spirits away at night. You watch the smoke drift up into the dark and wonder if it's true, if the thin gray curls can hold back the nightmares that wait beyond the glow. A man beside you begins to sing, his voice low and rough. It's an old song, one that speaks of home and hearth, of fields green and golden in the sun. His voice cracks on the high notes, but no one minds. The song is a fragile bridge back to a world that feels impossibly far away. You close your eyes and let the song wash over you, the words blurring into the sigh of the wind and the soft crackle of the fire. For a moment, you can almost forget the weight of your armor, the ache in your arms. Almost. Historians still argue whether these nights of uneasy peace were worse than the battle itself. You think they might be right. In the dark, with only the faint light of the fire to keep you company, the mind wanders to every face you saw fall, every man who will never see another sunrise. You shift, the clink of your mail a harsh sound in the stillness. The cold seeps in through every gap in your armor, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The man who was singing falls silent, and for a moment, the only sound is the soft hiss of the wind through the trees. Quirky fact for you. Some soldiers carried tiny bells on their belts or helmets, believing the tinkling would keep away restless spirits. You think of the battlefield behind you, the souls that must still wander there, and wish for a bell of your own. The fire burns low, the embers glowing like the last heartbeat of a dying thing. You watch the men around you as they drift into fitful sleep, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Some toss and turn, caught in dreams that you know must be filled with blood and smoke. Others sit upright, eyes darting into the shadows, too afraid to close their eyes. You try to rest, but sleep is a fickle thing in this place. Each time your eyes close, you see the flash of blades, the flicker of death in the eyes of the men you fought beside. You hear the screams, feel the press of bodies, the cold bite of steel. Historians still argue whether these haunted nights shape the men who survive them. You know they do. The battle is a storm, but the night is a silent reckoning, a chance for the mind to replay every moment, every mistake, every breath you might not have drawn. The wind picks up, rattling the branches of the trees. You pull your cloak tighter, the rough wool scratchy against your skin, and stare into the last glow of the fire. You know you'll fight again tomorrow. You know the blood will flow once more, and the air will stink of death and iron. For now, you let the darkness press in. You let the cold settle in your bones, the weariness in your limbs. You listen to the low murmur of prayers, the soft rustle of men trying to find sleep in a world that seems determined to swallow them whole. You take one last breath, the scent of smoke and blood filling your lungs, and let your eyes close. The fire flickers in the darkness, the last bright thing in a night that has no mercy. And in the silence, you promise yourself that when the sun rises, you'll stand again, because there's no other choice. Section 15. Dawn breaks in a pale wash of light, the first breath of morning creeping across the battlefield like a hesitant apology. The air is bitter cold, the dew on the grass shimmering with a beauty that feels almost cruel in this place of ruin. You rise stiffly from your makeshift bed, every muscle screaming with protest as you shake off the heavy cloak of half-sleep. Around you, the men stir like ghosts, their faces pinched and hollow in the gray light. Some rub their eyes, others clasp cold bread in shaking hands, their movements slow and mechanical. No one speaks, the silence is thick, a fragile truce before the storm breaks again. Historians still argue whether medieval cavalry charges were the stuff of glory or simply brute force given wings. You're about to find out for yourself. The horses stand ready, their breath steaming in the chill, their massive bodies shifting restlessly beneath the weight of their riders. You stand among them, your own mount stamping the frostbitten earth. The smell of horse sweat and leather fills your nose, the scent so vivid it almost drowns out the memory of blood and steel. Almost. A knight nearby tightens the straps of his saddle, his hands quick and sure. His armor gleams in the dawn light, though the dents and scratches tell their own stories of battles survived. He spares you a glance, his face set in grim lines. No words passed between young one are needed. You both know what waits. Quirky fact for you. Some knights believed that whispering prayers into their horses' ears would protect them from harm. You murmur a few words yourself, though whether they're for the horse or for you, you're not entirely sure. The horns sound a low, mournful note that shivers through the cold air. You swing into the saddle, the weight of your armor settling heavy on your shoulders. The horse shifts beneath you, sensing your tension, and you lay a calming hand on its neck. The world narrows to the feel of the reins in your grip, the cold bite of the wind on your face. Historians still argue whether these cavalry charges were decided by the skill of the rider or the sheer weight of horse and steel. As the line forms up, you know it's both. The power beneath you is a living thing, a beast of muscle and bone that could carry you to victory or trample you beneath its hooves. The line stretches out, a river of lances and bright pennons that flap in the breeze. The horses snort and stamp, their ears flicking back at the clatter of armor and the low murmur of prayers. You feel your own pulse quicken, your breath coming faster as the weight of what's to come settles in your chest. A hush falls over the line as the commander raises his sword. The moment hangs suspended in the cold morning air, the only sound the soft clink of harness and the distant cry of crows. And then the sword drops, and the world explodes into motion. You dig in your heels, the horse surging forward with a thunderous power that rattles your teeth. The ground shakes with the force of 100 hooves pounding in unison, the sound a drumbeat in your chest. The wind roars in your ears, the world narrowing to the bright gleam of the enemy line and the thundering heart of the beast beneath you. Quirky fact for you. Some knights wore small charms sewn into their saddle pads, tokens of lovers or relics of saints, pressed close to the horse's heart for luck. You wonder if the talisman tied to your own saddle will do more than offer a moment's comfort. The enemy line looms ahead, the clash of steel and the cries of men rising to meet you. You lower your lance, the weight of it solid in your hand, and feel the surge of fear and exhilaration crash through you like a wave. This is the moment you've trained for, the moment that will decide if you live or die. The impact is a shattering collision, the lance driving forward with the weight of horse and man behind it. You feel the shock of it in your bones, the scream of splintering wood as the shaft snaps. You're thrown back in the saddle, the world a blur of motion and noise, but you hold on because to fall is to die. Historians still argue whether the lance was more deadly than the sword, whether the first clash was the end of the fight or just the beginning. In the chaos of hooves and steel, you know it's both. Some men fall in that first thunderous crash, others fight on, their blades flashing in the cold morning light. You draw your sword, the blade, a familiar weight in your hand, and press forward. Around you, the cavalry charge surges like a living wave, horses rearing and men shouting in a chorus of fury and fear. The ground is a churned sea of mud and hooves, each heartbeat a gamble with fate. Quirky fact for you, some medieval horses were trained to fight with their teeth and hooves as fiercely as any man. You feel the snap of jaws beside you, the sharp crack of hooves against shield, and know that, in this charge, every creature fights to live. You swing your sword, the blade ringing as it meets another. The impact jars your arm, but you keep going, the world a blur of motion and the harsh rhythm of survival. The horse beneath you moves with a fierce, living power, carrying you deeper into the maelstrom. Historians still argue whether the cavalry charge was the hammer blow that ended the fight, or just another cruel chapter in the endless story of war. Here, in the clash of hooves and steel, you know one thing. For the men who ride, there's no turning back. You press on, each breath a prayer, each heartbeat a promise to see another dawn. Because in this charge, in this thunderous dance of death, you are no longer just a man. You are part of something greater, something unstoppable. And for now, that is enough. Section 16. The thunder of hooves fades as the charge breaks apart, the shock of impact giving way to the brutal press of close combat. You find yourself in the thick of it, the weight of your sword an anchor as you fight to keep your seat in the saddle. Around you, the chaos of battle twists and churnsmen grappling with blades and fists, horses rearing in terror, the ground churned to a morass of blood and mud. The clang of steel on steel is a deafening music, a constant, jarring rhythm that drowns out every thought. You lean into it, your breath coming in ragged gasps, the world narrowed to the edge of your sword and the beat of your heart. Each swing is a prayer, each parry a promise to survive one more moment. Historians still argue whether the mountain knights truly ruled these battles, or if it was the common foot soldiers who held the line. You see the answer in the way the ground becomes a graveyard of broken lances and twisted men. There is no single champion here, only the endless struggle of bodies and blades. You rein your horse around, the beast snorting and rolling its eyes as it shies from the crush of men. You grip the reins tight, feeling the sweat-slick leather slide beneath your fingers. The weight of your armor pulls at your shoulders, but you force yourself to stay upright. If you fall now, there will be no mercy. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval taverns served a special brew called Knight's Ale. Before battle, a heady mix of herbs and spirits meant to steady the nerves and warm the blood. You could use a mug of it now, though you doubt it would do much more than dull the edge of fear. A shout draws your gaze. A young soldier, little more than a boy, stumbles in the press. His shield is gone, his face pale and bloodied. You see the moment of panic in his eyes, the way his breath comes in ragged sobs. Before you can call out, he vanishes beneath the hooves of a rearing horse, his cry lost in the cacophony. You wrench your eyes away, the bile rising in your throat. There's no time to mourn, no time to grieve. The fight surges on, a living thing that devours the fallen and leaves no space for the luxury of tears. Historians still argue whether the noise of battle, the screams, the clash of steel, the thunder of horses was enough to break a man's spirit. You know it is. The din fills your head, drowning out every thought but the next breath, the next heartbeat. You parry a blow from a man in a dented helm, his sword flashing in the half-light. The clang of your blades meeting is a jolt that rattles your teeth, but you push forward, the weight of your horse giving you the edge. The man stumbles, and you drive him back, your sword biting deep into the gap between his breastplate and helm. He falls, and you push on, your breath ragged and your arms trembling. Quirky fact for you: some knights carried a small dagger known as a mercy blade, meant to grant a quick end to a fallen foe. You wonder if mercy has any place in this maelstrom of mud and blood. The line bends, the press of bodies shifting like a tide. You see a knight fall from his saddle, his horse screaming as it crashes to the ground. The man struggles to rise, his armor clumsy and heavy in the sucking mud. Before he can find his feet, a foot soldier's axe finds a gap in his plates, and the knight's cry is lost in the roar. You spur your horse forward, the beast's hooves churning the mud, and swing your sword at the soldier. The blade bites deep, the man's head snapping back with the force of the blow. You don't pause, you can't. Each breath is a battle of its own, and the fight waits for no man. Historians still argue whether the tavern tales of brave knights and glorious charges were ever more than comforting lies. Here, in the crush of men and horses, you see the truth. There is no glory, only survival. The fight slows, the charge spent, and the men around you stagger back, chest heaving, blades drooping in tired hands. The horses stand with heads down and sides heaving, eyes rolling white in their skulls. The world seems to pause, the silence almost as shocking as the clash of steel. A soldier slumps in his saddle beside you, his breath a thin wheeze. His eyes meet yours, wide and haunted, and for a moment you see yourself in them, the same fear, the same exhaustion. You nod, a small gesture of shared understanding, and he nods back. Quirky fact for you: some medieval horses wore metal chanfrons on their heads, not just for protection, but because they were said to frighten the enemy with their gleaming alien shapes. Looking at your own horse, sweat darkened and snorting, you doubt there's anything more terrifying in this moment than the men who cling to life on its back. The line holds, just barely. Around you, men shift and murmur, the quiet filled with the hiss of labored breathing and the low groan of the wounded. The sun is higher now, a pale disk in a sky smudged with smoke and the dust of ruin. You take a breath, the taste of blood and sweat thick on your tongue, and steady your hands on the reins. The charge is done, but the battle is far from over. You know the next clash is already gathering in the distance, the next test of blood and steel. You hold your sword tight, your shield lifted, and wait for the next wave. Because in this place, in this dance of hooves and steel, there's only one choice: fight or be swallowed by the mud and the dark. Section 17. The echoes of the charge still ring in your ears, but the battle slows only to make room for another sort of fight. Behind the lines of soldiers and the churned up earth of the killing field, the lords and ladies gather in the shelter of their banners, voices hushed and eyes sharp as daggers. Here, in the tented pavilions and drafty castle halls, the true game of power is played. You trudge past a cluster of knights huddled in conference, their bright cloaks dulled by dust and sweat. Their faces are hidden behind visors and chain, but their words are sharp, slicing through the heavy air like the swords they bear. Promises and threats, alliances and betrayals, the feudal dance that keeps the gears of war grinding. Historians still argue whether these councils of war were more about strategy or the endless wrangling of egos. Listening to the lords bicker in clipped tones, you suspect it's both. Each word is a maneuver, each glance a gamble. You slip past a tent flap and catch a glimpse of a table strewn with maps and marker-stinny armies of wood and wax pushed this way and that. A lord with a hawk's nose and cold eyes moves the pieces with delicate precision, as if this battlefield is a chessboard and the men dying beyond the walls are merely pawns. Quirky fact for you: some lords in these councils carried secret poison-stinny vials of nightshade or belladonna, slipped into wine or bread for rivals who needed quieting. It's a grim reminder that even off the field, the blade is never far away. A young squire stands at the edge of the tent, his hands clutching a flagon of wine. His face is pale, eyes wide with the weight of what he sees and hears. He looks at you for a moment, and you see the question in his gaze. Is this really why men fight and die? You have no answer, so you look away. The murmur of voices blends with the crackle of the fire, the hiss of embers in the cold air. A lady in a velvet gown leans close to a knight, her voice low and sweet, her eyes hard as the steel of the blades outside. She speaks in honeyed tones, but you hear the edge beneath every word. In the courts and councils of these lords and queens, every word is a blade, every promise a dagger sheathed in silk. Historians still argue whether these intrigues ever truly shaped the course of war, or if the battle was always won and lost in the mud and blood of the field. But you see how the Lord's whispers guide the flow of men like rivers, how the promises of land and title bend even the strongest sword arm to their will. A knight with a scarred cheek leans in to speak, his voice a low rasp. You catch only a fragment, the king's favor, but the weight of those words hangs heavy in the air. The king's favor is life itself, a shield against the knives of rivals and the cold edge of oblivion. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval lords kept trained birds of prey hawks and falcons that rode their arms like living weapons. In these councils, they were more than pets. They were a silent warning, a reminder that even in peace, the hunter's claw was always near. You see a serving boy slip between the lords, his head bowed low. He pours wine into goblets that glint in the firelight, but his ears are sharp, his eyes quick. Information is as valuable as gold in this place, and the boy knows it. You wonder how many secrets he's gathered in his quiet, careful way. The Lord's words shift, like the flicker of a candle's flaming out loud, now soft, now sharp as steel. They speak of alliances sealed in blood and marriage, of land promised and stolen, of the ancient grudges that burn hotter than any forge. You hear the names of distant kingdoms, of border disputes that have claimed more lives than any one sword could tally. Historians still argue whether these lords and ladies truly believed in the chivalric ideals they so often praised. Watching them here, draped in finery while men die beyond the walls, you think the ideals are as thin as the parchment maps they move like pieces of a game. You step back into the cold night air, the tent's warmth already fading. The clash of steel is a distant murmur now, but you know it will roar again soon. You look back at the flicker of the tent's firelight, at the shadows of the lords who shaped this world with their whispers and their knives. Quirky fact for you. Some queens were said to carry small daggers hidden in the folds of their gown's pretty trinkets for protection or a final desperate strike. In this world, even beauty is armed. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and turn back toward the line of men who stand in the cold and the mud. The lords will keep their counsels, the queens their whispered plots. But for you, for the men who fight and bleed, the only truth that matters is the blade in your hand and the breath in your chest. You steel yourself for the next clash, the next surge of steel and blood. Because beyond the soft glow of the Lord's pavilions, the real battle waits sand. It doesn't care for fine words or silver tongues. Section 18. The sun dips low, casting the field in a burnished light that turns the blood-soaked ground into a river of rust and shadow. In the lull before the next clash, the bards and minstrels emerge strange, almost otherworldly figures in this place of slaughter. They come with lyres and lutes, with voices tuned to tales of glory and doom, and for a moment, you see how even here, song can shape the world. They sing of the day's deeds, their words weaving the clamor and terror of battle into verses that will echo long after the clash of swords has faded. The soldiers pause, some leaning on battered shields, others closing their eyes to let the music wash over them like a balm. Historians still argue whether these ballads are fact or fancy, truth or comfort spun from the smoke of dying fires. You hear the tremor of old legends in every note, and wonder if the truth matters at all, when the world is ending, one breath at a time. A bard stands near you, his face lined and weathered, his fingers deft on the strings of his harp. His voice is low and rich, carrying a tale of a knight who stood alone against an army, of how he fell, but how his name will be sung as long as breath stirs the world. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval minstrels carried their own daggers, not just for protection, but because the stories they told could earn them as many enemies as friends. In a world of shifting alliances, even the power of a song can be a weapon. The music wends through the smoky air, a thread of beauty in a tapestry of ruin. You see men straighten as they listen, their eyes bright with the distant fire of hope. For a moment, they forget the ache in their arms and the cold bite of the wind. The bard's voice rises, and the words twist around the memory of the day. The thunder of hooves, the crash of steel, the silent prayers of men who know that tomorrow is never promised. You hear your own heartbeat in the rhythm of his song. Feel the weight of every man who fell and every man who still stands. Historians still argue whether these songs were meant to bind men together or to remind them of what they stood to lose. In the hush between verses, you think it's Both H note a reminder of what's at stake. A younger bard joins the first, his voice bright and clear, singing a ballad of a queen who waited at a castle window, her love gone to the wars. You see some of the soldiers smile, a ghost of something tender in their worn faces. Even here, in the mud and blood, there's room for love's soft ache. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval lords kept court poets whose job was not just to sing of glory, but to spin the stories of the day's battle into the kind of legend that could hold a kingdom together, tear it apart. The song swells, and you feel your heart rise with it. The words weave the threads of the battle into something more than just blood and steel, into a story, a memory that will outlive the men who fight and die to make it real. You think of the knights who will be carved into stone, their deeds sung in the halls of lords, of the foot soldiers whose names will be lost to time, but whose blood waters the same soil. The bard sings of them all, his voice the echo of a promise that no matter how the world breaks, the story will endure. Historians still argue whether these ballads can truly capture the terror and triumph of a battlefield. But as the last note fades into the cold evening air, you know that for the men who hear them, the songs are a shield against the dark. The bards bow, their instruments cradled close, and the soldiers murmur thanks. Some press coins into their hands, others just nod and turn away, their faces shadowed by the firelight. The minstrels move on, their songs trailing behind them like the last light of the setting sun. Quirky fact for you. Some bards believed that a well-told tale could sway the hearts of kings and queens more surely than any sword. Watching them move through the camp, you think perhaps they were right. The night closes in, the chill of the wind carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and blood. The songs linger in your mind, a fragile defiance against the coming dark. You tighten your grip on your sword and stand a little straighter, the music a memory of something worth fighting for. Because tomorrow, the battle will rage again, and the songs of tonight will be all that stands between the cold and the dark. Section 19. The cold seeps in deeper as the last songs fade, the quiet around you heavy as a shroud. The night has become a slow dance with death, every breath a soft prayer, every heartbeat a fragile promise to see the dawn. You move through the camp like a wraith, the embers of cook fires and the flicker of watch lamps casting your shadow long and thin across the churned earth. Around you, the men sleep in ragged rows, their cloaks pulled tight against the chill. Some snore softly, lost in dreams that are almost certainly kinder than the waking world. Others lie with their eyes open, staring into the darkness as if they can see the shape of the future in the cold night air. Historians still argue whether soldiers truly accepted that each night might be their last, or if that thought was buried under the endless repetition of fighting and marching. You think it's both the knowledge of death, a constant companion, the mind's quiet rebellion to keep it at bay. You walk past a man who sleeps with his hand still clutching the hilt of his sword, the blade a cold comfort in the night. Another holds a small token close to his chest, a locket, perhaps, or a scrap of cloth from someone who waits far away. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval soldiers carried tiny relics sewn into their tunics, bits of bone or cloth meant to turn aside the blade. In the dark, those charms feel as solid as the steel in your hand. You pause near a low fire where a group of men hunch close, trading stories in low voices. Their faces are lined with dirt and weariness, but their eyes are bright in the firelight. One tells a joke that earns a rough laugh, a moment of shared warmth in the cold. You catch only a few words, something about a farmer, a pig, and a bucket of halibut. The laughter is a balm against the night. Historians still argue whether these small comforts mattered, if the laughter of a soldier could keep the darkness at bay. Watching these men how they lean into the moment, how they cling to the flicker of the fire, you know the answer is yes. You move on, your breath clouding the air in soft puffs, your footsteps muffled by the cold earth. A figure stirs from the shadows ahead of a man in a battered surcoat, his face half hidden by the brim of his helm. He watches you pass, his eyes bright and unreadable. You nod, and he nods back. A silent exchange that says, "We're still here." Quirky fact for you. Some medieval warriors believed that the sound of a blade drawn in the dark could drive away evil spirits. You think of the soft rasp of steel, the promise of protection in the hush of night, and you wonder if it's the spirits that fear the blade or the man who wields it. The wind picks up, a low sigh that stirs the dying fires and sends a shiver up your spine. You pull your cloak tighter, your fingers stiff with cold. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, the sound carrying across the fields like a lonely lament. You wonder if the wolf sings for the dead or for the living who must rise again come morning. Historians still argue whether these moments of quiet were truly moments of peace or just another kind of waiting. You feel the truth in your bones. This night is as much a battlefield as any field of blood and steel. The mind fights its own wars here, the heart its own skirmishes. You pause for a moment, your eyes fixed on the line of watchfires that mark the edge of the camp. Beyond them, the darkness waits vast and silent, a promise and a threat. You take a breath, tasting the cold and the smoke, and let it settle in your lungs. The night presses close, but you stand your ground. Quirky fact for you. Some soldiers swore that if you whispered a secret into the dark, the wind would carry it to the ears of the dead. You wonder what secrets this night has already gathered, what last words and silent prayers will echo in the darkness long after the battle is done. You turn back toward the glow of the fires, the quiet laughter of the living, the soft murmur of the men who will stand beside you when the sun rises. You feel the weight of the night settle around your shoulders like a cloak, but you square them just the same. Because tomorrow, the swords will clash again. Tomorrow, the cries will rise. But tonight, in this fragile moment of calm, you claim the breath in your chest and the beat of your heart as your own. And in the hush of the dark, you promise yourself you'll see the dawn. Section 20. The first light of dawn creeps across the battlefield, turning the world to a cold, silvery hush. You stand at the edge of the camp, the frost crunching beneath your boots as you watch the sun slowly burn away the shadows of the night. Around you, the men stir to life once more, shoulders hunched, breath misting in the morning air. No one speaks swords feel too heavy, too final in this hour before the battle begins anew. The cold sinks into your bones, but it's not just the chill that makes you shiver. It's the knowledge that today, like every day before, is a gamble with death. You feel it in the quiet murmur of the soldiers as they tighten the straps of their armor, in the way they check and recheck the edges of their blades. Historians still argue whether the men who rose each morning for battle truly believed in the cause, or if they simply couldn't bear the shame of staying behind. Watching the men around you, you think the answer is both loyalty and fear woven together in every heartbeat. The horns sound, a low, mournful note that trembles in the cold air. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it settle in your chest. You think of all the days that have come before, all the nights spent under the flicker of campfires and the weight of silent prayers. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval soldiers swore that if you kissed the hilt of your sword at dawn, it would taste the blood of your enemies before the day was done. You brush your lips across the cold steel and wonder if it's truer if the kiss is more for you than the blade. The line of men forms slowly, each soldier taking his place with the heavy finality of men who know what waits beyond the next heartbeat. You see the pale faces of the young and the hard eyes of the veterans, each one a reflection of your own quiet dread. Historians still argue whether these final moments before the clash were the hardest, whether the silence was more cruel than the roar of battle. You think it is. In the quiet, there's nowhere to hide from the fear that thrums in your veins. The command comes to advance, and you step forward into the morning light. Your breath fogs before your face, the frost crunches beneath your boots, and each step feels like a prayer. Not today, not yet. You see the enemy line forming across the field. The the glint of armor catching the first rays of the sun. They stand silent too, each man locked in his own private battle with the fear that curls in the pit of his belly. Quirky fact for you. Some medieval warriors believed that the first man to set foot on the field would be the first to die. You watch the man beside you, see the way his foot hesitates, and you step forward first, because someone has to. The sun climbs higher, and with it comes the slow, steady beat of drums. The sound is a pulse in the air, a heartbeat that grows louder with every breath. You tighten your grip on your sword, feeling the leather of the hilt bite into your palm, and raise your shield. Historians still argue whether the final charge was a moment of madness or of perfect clarity. As you break into a run, the world narrowing to the clash ahead, you know it's both. The impact comes like thunder, the scream of steel and the crack of shields shattering the morning's quiet. You fight without thought, your body moving with the frantic, instinctive rhythm of survival. The world is a blur of motion and noise, of sweat and blood and the sharp tang of iron. You see a man fall, his eyes wide and a face gone pale as milk. You see another swing his sword with a cry that tears the air like a prayer. You fight on, because there is nothing else, no other choice but to keep breathing, keep swinging. Quirky fact for you. Some chroniclers wrote that in the thick of battle, men could see visions, phantoms of saints, or the Virgin herself, guiding their hands. You see nothing but the eyes of the man before you, and the hard truth of the blade in your hand. The sun is high when the clash finally begins to slow, the ground littered with the dead and dying. You stand in the wreckage, your breath coming in ragged gasps, your limbs trembling with the weight of the day. Historians still argue whether these final moments of battle were the true end or just another turn in the endless dance of blood and power. As you look around at the broken shields and the silent dead, you know the answer doesn't matter. Because for you, for the men who fought and bled, the battle is never truly over. It lives in the quiet after, in the scars you carry on your skin, and in the dreams that haunt your sleep. You take a slow breath, the cold air sharpening your lungs, and step away from the field. The world is quiet again, the sun warm on your face, and for a moment, it almost feels like peace. The sun drifts lower, painting the battlefield in soft gold and shadow. You walk away from the clash, your body aching, your mind heavy with the weight of all you've seen. The clang of steel fades to a distant memory, the cries of the dying carried away by the soft sigh of the wind. You find a quiet place near a low hill where the grass grows green and the air is sweet with the promise of rain. You sink to the earth, the cold seeping through your armor, and let yourself rest. The weight of your sword slides from your hand, the edge dulled by the day's work. The blood and the mud cling to your skin, but for now, it doesn't matter. You close your eyes and listen to the rustle of the grass, the distant murmur of a stream. The world feels gentle here, as if it has forgotten, for a moment, the cruelty of men and the hunger of war. You take a slow breath, the air cool and clean, and let it wash away the last echoes of the battle. Historians still argue whether peace is ever truly possible in a world so scarred by violence. But here, in the hush of twilight, you find a fragile kind of calm. The sun sets slow and soft, the sky fading from gold to dusky rose. The shadows grow long, and you let them cradle you. You close your eyes, the weight of the day easing in the gentle dark, and in that stillness, you find your breath, your heartbeat steady and quiet in the deepening night. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, but tonight, you rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.